All right. Well, let's officially get started. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Latasha Wilson, and I am the owner of Hip Hop Hits and Partio Fitness. I'm also the chair for the Black Advisory Business Council for the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you today for joining us for Thriving in the C-Suite. I hope you all had an opportunity to see some of the ways that the Chamber has been celebrating Black History Month through the social media channels. And I want to go ahead and say that today's conversation is part of that celebration. We are delighted to have two amazing leaders in our community as part of this conversation and as part of the Black Excellence panel. We do have time that's going to be reserved for the end for questions. So if you are on the Zoom call virtually, please stay muted and wait until either you're called on to ask your questions. But we do have time reserved at the end. And also for the people who are in the room, you will be able to come up here to the microphone and ask your question if you have a question. So get ready. I'm excited to turn this over to our moderator for today, Nik Whitcomb, who is the producing artistic director of Bag&Baggage. Help you welcome Nik and the rest of it.
I bring my own applause. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Thank you all for being here in the virtual world and in the real world. It's super exciting to have this conversation and to have you folks to be a part of this. As Latasha said, my name is Nik Whitcomb. I'm producing artistic director of Bag&Baggage Productions in Hillsborough, or general manager, whichever you decide, whichever day you feel. The title changes because the job changes. And I'm also the secretary of the Black Advisory Business Council. So I want to thank Washington County Chamber of Commerce and the BABC for having this event and for having me as a part of it. Okay, I'm going to stop talking right now and introduce our two esteemed guests. So joining us today is Nathan Cox, who is the CEO of InRoads Credit Union, and John Hairston, who is the CEO and administrator of Bonneville Power Administration. Hello, welcome to you both. We're so excited to have you, and I'm actually going to go off script a little bit. I'm going to start with John. I've learned that you have been at Bonneville for 33 years. What was your journey to, one, get into the energy industry and then your path to leadership?
Okay, well, no, that's a great question. And, it's interesting because I don't think anyone starts off, or at least I didn't start off, thinking I would be in the energy business for 33 years. I graduated from college, the Southern University, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I had played played baseball for them. When I graduated, I had opportunity to play a little ball professionally with the White Sox. So when I came home, I had my degree in economics, played ball during the summer, came home, was looking for a job in my field, and happened to run into a gentleman by the name of George Bell, who was also at the time an executive at Bonneville Power Administration and a graduate of Southern University. We met up, and he advised me to go down and meet with some folks there that were hiring economists short term, so I could work 6 months and then go play baseball for another 6 months. And Bonneville was really accommodating to me. They allowed me to at least pursue what at the time was a dream, trying to make it to the major leagues. But I had impressed them enough with my work that when that teetered out, they hired me on full time.
That's amazing. And how long were you with the company before you were in a leadership position?
So I started at Bonneville in 1990. And, I progressed, fairly well, moving up within the rate design, rate forecasting organization. But I had a supervisor by the name of Barney Keep, who asked me one day, he said, "Hey, what would you like to do with your career?" And I looked around and, I thought, "Hey, Barney, if I'm a technical specialist, GS 13, which is kind of, the ranking if you're familiar with the federal service." I said, that'd be a career. And he looked at me and he said, "No, I think you need to think a little bit, higher than that." He felt I had management, skills or what's management material. And so he encouraged me to look at positions as they came open that were more in the supervisory management track. And I did that. So I started in 90, and in 1995, got a position as a supervisor in our energy efficiency group in Spokane, Washington. So my wife and I moved our two young kids up to Spokane, and I began the management kind of track at that point.
Love that. I love that you mentioned, both of those stories included a person. I feel like there's always someone, uh, at whatever level you're at, whether you're just graduated from school or in school or at your job, that kind of is either the one that gets you to the next level or pushes you to that next thing. So thanks for sharing that. Nathan,
Yes, sir.
you've been in this job for 9 months.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So what has it been like for you in the financial field, kind of growing into leadership? And what has the transition been moving here? And I believe you were U.S. banks before here.
Yeah, that was the last major bank I worked for. First of all, the transition to Oregon has been great. I love being a resident of Oregon. I'm getting used to the pedestrians running the city because they take right away. That's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's really been great because what I'm really surprised for is the warmth and reception of the community, both locally in the area I work in Columbia County, but just overall. I love the passion for economic development, the passion for community development, and that's what inspires me to get going. I mean, I was up at 5:15 in the office at 7 today, and it's like I'm going because I want to make a difference, and we're in the ability or using the company to do that, especially now that we're expanding out into Washington County.
Totally. So, moving, you were with a major corporation like U.S. Bank, and now you're with a credit union. So
Right.
what has that shift been like for you, and why did you decide to go this way in your career at this point?
One thing, probably the biggest difference is that when you work for a major bank, there's a certain level of infrastructure and technology that's there. And when you work for a small company, that isn't always present. So you need an entrepreneurial spirit to try to make that work. But really, the transition from a bank to a credit union really wasn't that difficult, to be honest. I was told long ago, don't settle to the pace of the organization, have the organization work to your pace. So I'm trying to instill the sense of urgency within the company for people to get things done, yesterday, not tomorrow, but get it done yesterday. So that way our impact in the community can be greater and faster.
Totally. What are some things that you've learned? This is for both of y'all. You can answer in whatever order you'd like. What have you learned on your leadership journey that you would pass on to someone that's coming behind you, and specifically a person of color that's looking to go into a space of leadership at some point?
Why don't you start, John?
All right. Well, thanks for the question. I think there's a couple of things that, I would say folks need to consider. One, I think Nathan touched on it. You have to have someone in the room who's a champion for it. So if you want to move up at the ranks, that's something I learned later in my career. I thought it was just the work alone, and you can do a tremendous job, but if you don't have a person, an advocate for you when they're making decisions to hire at a level, manager level or executive level, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So building those relationships are really critical. And then the other piece is, I tell folks all the time that, in the role, any leadership role I've been in at Bonneville, the only thing I could really do by myself after day one is fail. You have to rely on everyone that's working in the organization to be successful. And not only relying on them, but also recognizing the work that they bring to the table, their accomplishments, and what they're doing to contribute to the success of the organization.
I'll go back to something John said about when he first got the job coming out of Southern. Back in 1992, when I was working at Wells Fargo, I was in the small business part of the bank, and I was doing very well, but I wanted to do something more challenging, and that's always been my forte. I want to be intellectually challenged. So had someone in the corporate and commercial banking world kind of tap me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we've heard about you. We see good things, and we'd like to, we have an opportunity here. We'd like you to take a look at it." And ironically, again, unbeknownst to me, that person went to the same undergraduate school that I did. So again, back to John's point, those relationships and those connections are good, and that really catapulted my career and opened up my eyes to what banking was like, because my first job out of college was not in banking. My first job was with the Gallo Winery building displays in Los Angeles, and I was in the wine industry for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what keeps you both grounded? And what do you what's the thing you tell yourself every day before you go and lead the people on the charge of energy and money?
I'll go. We had an all-staff meeting. We do them twice a year, and at the last one, I was kind of up on a platform behind a mic. And I was like, I don't need this. I'm kind of one with the people, so to speak. And I made a challenge to the staff. So all the employees are in one room, and I said, I'm only going to have one non-negotiable that I'm going to ask of you. You don't have to work the hours I do. You don't have to do what I do. But all I ask is that what I'm going to invest everything I have in you to see you be successful. And all I ask is that you invest the same in yourself as I'm investing you. That's all I ask. So I want people to realize, because again, John played baseball, I played college basketball. I take a coaching mentality to things. So I try to lead by example, and I always tell people, fail forward, fail fast. You won't get fired for being stupid. Just get fired for making stupid mistakes over and over. And I said that with HR in the room, so I was okay. But my point is that I want people to fail, because you learn more from your mistakes, you do your successes. And what inspires me is I want to leave a legacy. And that's why I was excited about coming to Portland. I've been here a ton of times on business, but never really lived here. And it's just a lot of fun. So I want my legacy to be what I did for the community, and how what I did as CEO to impact the underserved, the underprivileged, and the underrepresented.
Your turn.
Yeah, no, I really like that. For me, all throughout my career, it's been really faith and family and relationships. I think those three are kind of the building blocks for what grounds me. When I get up every day, knowing where I'm at as a person, and what I'm bringing to the table, for the people who depend on me is important. And, my family, I have 4 daughters, and, that's basically my purpose. And so, when I would go into work, if it was a little tough, I always thought about they're depending on me, and making sure that I was able to kind of work through whatever challenges I had. And then, the other piece of it is just, I said relationships. It's important to me that, I build really strong relationships with our workforce, or my immediate reports. And the reason being is that, we accomplished a lot of things. In my tenure as administrator thus far, we've done really, some really great things. But at the end of the day, when I go to retirement parties and those types of things, we can talk about all the accomplishments, but what really you remember is how that person made you feel. And to me, that's the important piece, is that folks walk away from the things that we accomplished feeling good about it, and wanting to come back, and feeling as though Bonneville is a great place to work.
Yeah.
I love it.
In case anyone's curious, I did not play a sport in college. Just wanted to put that out in the room. That was high school. I did play lifelong sports in high school. Hashtag shuffleboard's awesome. Okay. So the Chamber supports businesses of all levels. And the Black Advisory Business Council and all the councils support small businesses specifically, kind of make that network. So what is a piece of advice that you might have for someone that is at that point where they're kind of, they might be ready to give up on that idea, or think that maybe it's not the right way to go? Or like, what's your nugget of advice you give to the person that needs that push to keep on keeping on, to move it in that entrepreneur life?
I'll share a quick story, then I'll give you probably that nugget. My son, he'll be 33 this July, married. They're expecting their first child in August. I'll be first-time grandparent in August, the granddaughter. Thank you. About a year ago, he's like, Dad, why don't you retire? It's like, you've been going at it for a while. It's time to do something different. And I said, no. I said, between Alzheimer's is prevalent in my family, so I said, I got to keep pushing. Also, there's other opportunities. I still got a lot of gas left in the tank. But I said, if I don't push now, then when I'm babysitting your daughter, she's not going to know what's possible. And that's why I push, so that way the next generation, they can see what's out there. What I would say is that for someone that's thinking about kind of folding up the tent and going home, I would say, hell no. Put everything you have into your business plan. Because we were talking about this the other day. In my career, I've been blessed. I've probably done, or I would say I probably approved or recommended just under $1 billion in commercial loans, and a little bit on the consumer side. And I would say less than 5% have been women or people of color. So, but the difference between that, and I go back to a quote that Warren Buffett had a long time ago. He said, "What's the difference between the rich and the poor?" He said, "The rich plan for the future, the poor plan for Saturday night." So I go back to that business plan. If you are an entrepreneur and you have a concept, a product, a service, put everything you have into that business plan, and then present that business plan, to people like John, myself, to review it, to develop those relationships, because it's not about who's in front of you. It's about how big you can make that orbit and leverage those relationships in that orbit.
Any thoughts, John?
Yeah, I agree. I think you want to have that determination, as an entrepreneur. And, the other piece of it is you have to be smart, right? There's risk for a reason. There's and so you want to make sure you're, evaluating where you're at, what risks there are in achieving the objectives that you're going after. And really setting clear, achievable goals. One of the things I notice a lot of when folks have challenges, they're trying to get a startup off the ground or a business off the ground, they don't really set achievable goals. They think, it's going to be immediate success. But, generally, I think Nathan will tell you, it takes years for businesses to begin to turn a profit. You're breaking even for a while. And so you have to be okay with that, and those goals have to be in alignment with that steady growth, not exponential first year growth, but steady over a period of time. And if you're realistic, then you can hang in there and appreciate the journey.
Love it. I'll also just add creativity. I think I hear creativity in a lot of what you folks are talking about, and I think creativity looks different. It's not just coloring sheets and pages, but like something's not working, then like switch it up, see what else might work, or try something that people are like that would never happen. You're like, I don't know, might see what happens, and that's a learning experience,
Right.
So that's amazing. Okay. I think it's time to open it up to questions.
Sure.
So we got people here. You can raise your hand if you would like. If you are on the Zoom, use the raise hand function, and we will try to make sure we can hear you to ask your questions. You can also, if you don't want to speak, drop your questions in the chat. And our moderator, Christy Dodge of Dodge Media Productions, will make sure that we see them and can get to you as soon as we can.
It's already set up with Dominic.
Oh no. All right, we already got a question.
It's not going to be
Yes.
overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Harry has a question in the room.
Thank you for speaking today. My name is Barry Smith. I am the owner of BJ's Consulting. And I represent a Christian consulting company. I have a question for you. So, on the
mic. Sorry. I should also say, if you're in the room, please use the microphone. It's not over yet.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
All right. I'm just gonna. There we go. Hello. Can you hear me? All right. Cool. My question is, as you're moving up in your career, how do you find or kind of assess your champions or advocates, or that can help you along in your career? And do you have any advice for that?
Yeah. So great question. I'll admit it was challenging for me, and it might have been a cultural thing. You come into a organization and you stand out as an African American. It's very low percentages, and so you have to be comfortable with finding advocates, from other backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures. And so it took some time for me to get over that. I had a gentleman, another name. His name was Alan Burns. He was a vice president in our power services organization. And I remember I was working for him. He gave me an opportunity to do something that was pretty novel in the organization, challenging assignment. And when I completed it, or got it up and running, he really complimented me on how I was able to do that. And he told me, he says, you need to look at taking that next step. But he says, I'm going to tell you, John, he says, you don't build relationships. So when they're in the room, they talk about the great work you do, but you just don't have that little bit extra in terms of relationships to get over the hump. And so he advised me to, just go out and, have lunch with folks, people who can make that difference and build that relationship. You're not going to automatically be friends, but what they will do is get familiar and comfortable with you. And so they could see you as someone who could be part of that group, a contributing part of that group. And I think that will lay itself for, I think future success.
Yeah, I would say as you identify a potential mentor or person of interest, just don't look directly in terms of who could help you, but look across. I'm big on what I call cross-functional leadership or cross-functional projects. So if like in our world, like right now, we have a pretty senior position that we're filling on the branch side. And I told the lady that oversees it, they'll make the hire. Don't just look down below to the people that report to that function, look across the company. And then that way you can, develop more of a skill set. And also when you're talking to these mentors, yes, you have an interest in terms of what's going to benefit you, but you also want to present to them what you bring to the table and how you can help them in their line of business or whatever's interest to them. And, a mutual relationship, and that's what it's about. So yes, you're going to network and you want to put your own interests out there, but it has to be a win-win for everybody involved.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, Sonia Judd.
Gentlemen, just checking my audio. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Awesome. Nathan and John, it's such a pleasure to have you there today. My question is, they say it's lonely at the top. And as hard as you've worked and as many advocates and sponsors and mentors as you can get, these are people that are consistently pushing you further and higher, and they're supporting you in different ways. Specifically, how do you open yourself up to non-Black direct reports in a way that's vulnerable and in a way that you're walking that fine line of being vulnerable and being their leader that carries, right, the whole team? How difficult is that, and how do you do that?
Good question.
I'll start off. Number one, you always have to be authentic, and your direct reports, no matter what background they're from, they're going to sense when you're not authentic. I'm big on self-awareness. So when I do my coaching and my direct reports, who are all executives, I try to see things through their eyes, and I coach, I speak, I lead from their perspective. So as I communicate, I'm speaking their language, not necessarily mine per se. And there's something, where we talk about meeting people where they are. So I think one of the things I've struggled with is a generational gap. I've managed people in their late 20s, early 30s, and mid 30s. And, that generation seems to know everything, live and die by a podcast and their phone. And I'm not that way. And then, so I've had to learn to adapt and adjust, and, people are just different. But I think when you are sincerely authentic and not apologetic, and that's going to come through, at the end of the day, you have to know your business. And as people will challenge you, when you're ready for that challenge and you can kind of flip the script and show them what you know and prove that you did not get here just because of what you look like. You got here because of your ability, your skill, and your tenacity to be successful. That has a tendency to quiet a lot of folks.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think being authentic is critically important. And the other piece of it is I often think of it, in the role that I'm in now, leading an organization, 4,000 people across multiple states. I need to focus on the people I have leading at that next level and down through management. I should be spending 60% of my time on people, and if not more, quite honestly. And so, I focus on, how, I'm putting together an executive team, how they work well together. And through that, if you're being authentic, you can share, thoughts and concerns and experiences, and folks tend to appreciate that, and they appreciate it through the relationships you build. If you spend the time to build a relationship, you begin to have that trust where you can share those experiences. People see what's going on in the world. They know history. They see these things. These are highly educated folks who are working in these organizations. So if you build that relationship, they're very capable of, having shared experience or empathy towards what you're experiencing.
Something I'm hearing both of you kind of speak to is cross-cultural. You mentioned mentorship and also like that back and forth relationship, and also leading people in different generations and backgrounds. So I guess my question is, how do you? What are some techniques that you use when you're like, you like your podcast and I literally don't care, or it's like this thing is happening in the world that is clearly affecting you because you're from X population and may not affect others in this way. Like, what are the tools that you kind of use when you're leading a team to kind of get through those moments?
Yeah, for me, I think Nathan said something about meeting people in the place where they're at. It's important for me that we have what I would describe as not only a physically safe environment where people are physically safe, but an emotionally safe environment, inclusive. And when you want or you strive for that environment, you really go the extra mile in making folks feel comfortable in who they are. You want them to be authentic, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when they're going to do their best work. That's when they're going to be the best person that they bring forward. So, making sure that you provide that work environment, I think is critical. And when you do that, then you'll see folks relax. And not everybody's going to like what I do. Mm-hmm. I love playing golf. Not everybody likes that. My daughters don't. I would love for them to come out with me, but that's fine. Right. But there's a lot of things we have in common, and you have to take that same attitude when you get to the workplace. The things that you focus on for work, but you also have to appreciate the experience that they have outside of work. I think to really build a strong relationship.
I think we learn a lot from our parents and grandparents, and my mom's been deceased for 10 years, and she had some very witty sayings. My family's originally from St. Louis, and she had two things that I think are very applicable. One, she said, women are right 90% of the time. The other 10%, they're probably right. Uh-huh. But she also said, don't let your kindness be used as a weakness. Uh-huh. So, to John's point, we're both ex-athletes. And while I don't wear my competitiveness on my sleeve, I'm insanely competitive. And when you challenge me, then, okay, let's tighten up the laces, let's go play. So I think regardless of the generation or where they are in the company, you have to demonstrate that, yes, you're going to meet them where they are. But as the CEO, you have to be competitive, you have to be driven. Yes, you have to be compassionate and empathetic. But at the same time, we are where we are, and we keep staying where we are because we get results. And at the end of the day, I don't care if it's publicly traded company, a nonprofit credit union, we have to drive results.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna let y'all ask questions again, I promise. But you both have mentioned the word authenticity, and I just kind of want to just dig in there a little bit. It's like, has there been a time when your authenticity has been challenged in the workplace? And what did you do to kind of like push past that moment? And what do you do to inspire authenticity and truth from your employees and other stakeholders?
You want to take that one, Nathan, first?
Okay, so give me a time where
your authenticity, like you're going through the journey of your path, and someone has been like, hey, like, there are lots of ways to get to the top. You both seem like folks that have taken the right way. Has there been a time where you've kind of been has there been a shortcut, or maybe you're like, that doesn't really sit with my morals, so I need to step aside?
My professional career has been like an escalator. Get promoted, lateral, promoted, lateral. I haven't just gone up like this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been helpful because it gives me a much broader lens to look at how I go about business. But I would say back in the end of '92, beginning of '93, when I got promoted into the commercial and corporate banking sales world at Wells Fargo. I remember going to a year-end meeting, and I was looking around the room, and there's about 19 or 20 people in the room doing the same thing I did, and I was the only one that looked like me. And I didn't realize that at that time, I was actually the first person of color to hold a sales officer position in commercial or corporate banking at Wells Fargo. Had no idea, because I'm just focused on getting results.
Yeah.
And as that year progressed, people are wondering, well, can this guy do it? Is he okay? Took me a while to kind of get my sea legs. And then after 6 months, okay, got my pace down. After a year, really got it going. After a year and a half, I was killing it. So you just have to be diligent about being successful. And there is an adage that, people of color have to work twice as hard. I agree with that, but I would rather be twice as smart as somebody else, because it can't take away what you know.
Yeah.
And I had, just real fast before we get to John, some of the best advice I got was from that mentor that hired me at Wells Fargo. I was going back to get my graduate degree, and I was going to go get a graduate degree in marketing, because that's what my undergrad was. And he said, no, go get a degree in finance. I'm like, finance was my worst subject in undergrad. I hated it.
Yeah.
He said, no, if you look at banking, every part of the banking industry, somehow, some way, finance comes into play. And that was an aha moment for me in the, I'd say mid '90s. And then that really changed the trajectory of my career, because now I had an MBA, and he said, look, you never want to be interviewing for a job when you are equal with the other candidate, and you may even be better than the other candidate, but the only reason they got the job is because they had an MBA you didn't. And I'll always remember that.
Yeah, and so great question. I do want to double click on something Nathan said, and I think it's important, and that's preparation, and that's having the tools, the education, that when you do walk into the room, it's all about the work that you're doing. There's no other boxes that need to be checked. And it's music to my ears, because when I finished Southern with my economics degree, I had initially applied to go to law school, but I ended up going to play baseball. When I came back and started working, I immediately went to graduate school, and because exactly that, I did not want to be in a competition where someone was more educated than me. It had to boil down to something else. And so, I got my master's in urban studies and planning, public administration, because we were, in that area, that space. And then eventually I did go back to law school to get my law degree. And so when we walk into a room, that box is checked. And so, that's vitally important. So you talk about entrepreneurship, you talk about all those things, you're going to have to grind. There's no easy button. You think you're going to do it without the education, those things. There's a few people, there's lottery tickets out there that, happen for folks, but for 95%, they have the credentials, they have the background to get it done. And so that's something I do want to convey. In terms of authenticity, I'm probably more authentic now in this role, being at this point in my career, than I've ever been. There's a definition of code shifting. I don't know if you've heard, but for years you go in and initially when I got out of college, I'm completely different at home than I am at work. I mean, and most people are, and you have to be comfortable with that. As I progressed in my career and had success, there were elements of me that came out a little bit more, but there's elements of me that shouldn't be in the workplace, quite honestly. And so, I adjust to what that workplace is, and that's fine. But there is that element, probably more so, I think, for us, in being able to adapt and make and not be as completely authentic as we would probably be. But I think I would say, for myself, speaking for myself, I feel like I'm basically there now.
Congratulations. Any other questions from the room, or? Okay. Amazing. Darrell, kick us off.
Hey everyone, I appreciate the time and opportunity to see what y'all doing over there in Washington County. I'm Darrell Kinsey Bam, running for mayor for the city of Portland.
Period.
And thank you, brother. And I just had a question in regards to authenticity. That's been a theme this evening. And when it comes to how we culturally identify, or how we recognize ourselves as, I would say, me personally, I would say Moors or Moorish people, but identify ourselves as a color. When you were raised, like what was the importance of us or you all identifying with a nation rather than a color? Like, what was that? Was that ever a thing? And how did that speak to you now, being that you were older?
I'll start off with that. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, went to high school there, college, and then moved to Sacramento in 1988, and then most recently come here. But I was raised in truly a melting pot neighborhood. Any and every culture lived within a 5 to 10 minute drive of my neighborhood. And the way I was raised was that, you treat everybody with respect, but, respect is earned, not given. And as I've gone through the workplace, and I'm willing to say that maybe to a certain extent in John's world, there's not a lot of people that look like us. So if we don't act authentic, we actually take a step back and you lose that representation. Mm-hmm. So for me, I've always been true to who I am. That's someone with strong values, strong faith, but also driven to be successful, not for me, but for the people I bring along. And John said something that's so funny, because like the where I am now, I'm very authentic. I mean, there's some parts where I've been in meetings and I have to grab our HR person and say this or wherever I one-on-ones, and I have to have vent. It's like, okay, here's what I feel, but you have to help me say it in the right way so I don't get in trouble. But because I'm very passionate about success, and maybe it's because I played high school and college basketball, I see in other people what they don't see in themselves. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to coach, I'm trying to lead, but I got some feedback today. She said, you know what? You can only coach people to a certain level. Sometimes you have to tell them what to do or get them out the way and go do it. Mm-hmm. And that was an aha moment for me, because I don't want to give up on people, but at the same time, if the clock's ticking, I got the ball, okay, I'll pass it to you. And if you think you can make the shot, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I'm probably going to take the shot. So, I'm trying to get there. So we're always learning. Just because we're a CEO doesn't mean that we may have lost who we are. I think we've gotten to be CEO, and I'm gonna speak on behalf of John this one time. I think we've gotten to where we are because of who we are. And we've never forgotten where we've been. And that allows us to really plow forward to where we're going. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's I agree completely with that. And so it sounded like your question was more, kind of a balance between nationalism. So how do you feel being part of the country, as well as versus being a Black man and the experience that we have. For me growing up, I was always part of teams, and I grew up in Oregon. So, first of all, when I was in school, you would make a beeline for anybody of color. We were at the table together. So you very quickly was able to assimilate to almost every culture. That's how you made friends the first day of school most of the time. But being able to live in neighborhoods and interact with your neighbors and friends, I always felt like I had a pretty wide swath of folks in my life, in my community, that was just really broad. I mean, and accepting. So I think I was blessed in that sense. And I've never had any real, issues with how did I feel about being in this country per se. I've always had I think a pretty, good experience. Now, it's not to say that I haven't run into some knuckleheads or something like that every once in a while, but it's been pretty good, and the experience in Oregon has been pretty good. And to the point where I was comfortable with raising my daughters here. And they've done well and have great sets of friends, and I really appreciate the community.
I'm going to take the mic again because you both spoke to something I think is important to kind of touch on. But I work in theater, and so I'm also often, and I'm a leader in theater, so I'm often also, only one who looks like me in a space. What kind of, I guess not pressure, but like, what is the opportunity for you feel like to be a prominent Black man in energy or finance, places that I think, Black folks haven't been invited to traditionally, or we have been nervous to speak about in certain ways. So like what, I guess, is there a level of responsibility that comes with that? And like, how do you navigate that as well?
Yeah, that's it's interesting. As I've kind of moved up in the organization and in the industry, I would say the representation, in terms of seeing people like yourself, in the audience or in that group, that circle, it's grown very little, probably not as much as it should have. So it's still, an environment where if you're looking for diversity, you're not going to find it. But what I find is that, I find really talented, smart people who, I'm able to, build really great relationships with, which I'm thankful for. It could be completely the other way, but what I've found is something that, I think has been a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I'd agree with John. I think the important thing is that someone opened the door for us, and it's up to us not only keep the door open, but to break it down and bring as long as many people as we can. Because I look at, my parents were both deceased. They Depression era kids that my dad's a Korean War veteran, and they grew up, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s where we couldn't be in a room like this. So that is not lost upon me, the sacrifices they made. So for me, as I impart that wisdom on my son, my nephews, and then now grandkids and great nephews, we just got to keep pushing. And I think that isn't that's not a decision, that's an obligation.
Okay, question you got. Okay, we'll go here, we'll go to Sonia, and then we'll go to Edison.
Okay, first of all, thank you for all the great wisdom that you are sharing. And as the chair for the Black Advisory Business Council, one of the things that I am seeing is our business owners and leaders, they are a one-man, one-woman show. And I think we get to that point where there's only so much you can do by yourself. And so I think making that transition up from being a solopreneur to a true entrepreneur, a leader, what advice would you give for them to make that jump, that space? Because I know for me, one of the things that I had to do was hire a virtual assistant. And at first I felt like, why do I need someone to help me take care of something? I didn't even feel worthy of that. So how important is it as a leader to build a team?
I'll share a couple of pieces of advice that were given to me about a year ago. As I was just looking at a lot of different things, and you see, get ready. You said, get comfortable to be uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, change occurs, and typically change leads to growth. Now, not all growth equals, not all change equals growth, but growth equals change. Love the idea about the virtual assistant. I think that's great. And I think I would connect with people that do what you do, or people whose opinions you value, and run these ideas by them. And to the point where there's only so much you can do, start leveraging your resources, your vendors, your other people in your space. Love the virtual assistant idea, leverage technology, and maybe you sit down with somebody that could be kind of a mentor consultant, say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I got option A, B, or C. What do I do? A lot of times people just automatically hire somebody or borrow money. Those are expense-driven decisions. Take a step back and say, okay, how strategically can I leverage this and really grow the business? So love the idea about the virtual assistant, because that frees you up to do what you do best, and that's run your business.
Yeah, no, I echo that. I tend to look at when we experience some type of need for expansion or growth, I don't, if it's at the corporate level or even at the entrepreneurial level, it has to be tailored, right? And I say tailored versus off the rack. If you're growing, you don't want to go and get something that doesn't quite fit, because there's waste, there's inefficiencies there. So each step need to be really tailored so you get the most out of it. There's no, what I call excess fabric or waste there. And that's a smart step. It gives you exactly what you need, and you learn from that. It's businesses are like, I say like kids, they're growing, and you don't want a 13-year-old kid in a baby onesie, right? And you're cutting the legs out of it. Yeah, you want to make sure that you're adjusting with the growth, and so taking those smart steps and tailoring it to exactly what you need, I think is important.
So you get a bunch of notes in the chat. So
Yeah, Sonia has a question for sure, and then there are other ones.
Do you want me to read the question?
Thank you,
to
Nik.
Sonia, do you want to just say the question?
Yeah, I could just say the question. Thank you,
Yeah.
Deanna. So have you ever been given advice, either of you, been given advice that you refuted, or you knew not feeling that advice? And if you have, what was the advice? And did you feel it was intentional based on a misjudgment of your character or your skills?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I'll say this. I got some advice that I did refute, but I was wrong. It was actually really good advice. And when I actually, took the advice, it helped me move forward in my career. But I had been working a position at Bonneville, managing a product which represented, is a pretty sizable amount of customer and revenues, and you're in the power business line, you're not in corporate, you feel pretty good. You're doing a good job. You're in a part of the business that's producing revenues, et cetera. And our chief operating officer came to me and said, you're finishing law school. Why don't, we'd like for you to maybe take on the assignment of standing up our compliance organization. And I said, well, I went home and I told my wife, I think they're trying to get rid of me. They want me to move out of this really prime job and into this other role and develop. And I was on the war path, and so I said, I called her back and said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't think it's in my best interest. And so she's, all right, well, just think about it. Well, she had our general counsel call me, who I knew and I trusted, and he sat down and we talked, and he started talking about, well, we know you can do this. You're really proficient. You're doing a great job in this part of the business. What we want to do is see how you stand up an entirely different organization that is just new ground for you. We want to see how you react to this, and he told me that I think it'd be a great opportunity for you. And it took that counsel for me to take that opportunity, and it wasn't easy. I mean, it was learning a lot of stuff about different positions, putting together the organization, the reporting structure, all of the things that we were going to focus on in terms of structure. And when we finished it, when I completed it, they asked me to stay on as the chief compliance officer, which was, you know, a really good opportunity for me. But I didn't see that at the time. I was really focused on the position I was in and what it was doing for me at the time, but I didn't see what this new role, how it would actually allow me to grow. So the advice she was giving me, her name was Ruth Bennett, I thought was spot on at the time, but you know, I mean, it was spot on, but at the time I didn't trust it.
I have a personal example, but I've used it for professional motivation. So back when I was a senior in high school, being the typical egotistical, arrogant high school senior in Los Angeles, I figured I was pretty good as a basketball player. And there were other people on my team that got more accolades, but I knew I was better than them. So I walked up to my high school basketball coach and I said, Coach, I want to go walk on a Division I school. You know, I've been accepted to all these different schools. Which one can I go to? And he looked me straight in the eyes, a 17-year-old black high school kid in LA, and says, Nathan, you'll never be good enough to play Division I. You need to go find a really small NAIA school, maybe go to junior college, or maybe just don't play. Wow. You're just not that good. Okay. Hey, thanks, Coach. All good. Have a nice day. So that was in the spring of 1982. I enrolled at Loyola Marymount. I was accepted, got some academic scholarships, and I literally walked up to the coach's office, said, Coach, my name is Nathan Cox. I want to try out for the basketball team. My parents said I have to sit out the first year because they want me to get off to a good start, but I want to try out. She said, okay. So I'm working out the whole thing. So fast forward the next year, I'm going through the workouts. And Sonia, I couldn't get a playwright to save my soul. I'm dropping the ball. I'm missing passes. But I'm playing good defense, all that stuff. But I was working hard. You can see that something was different. So October 15th is when practice starts, the NCAA, and the coach calls me up to his office. And I'm like, all right, I got cut. I'm like, oh, shit, I got off the team. So I walk up to the office and he had my game jersey, my practice jersey, and the keys to my locker. He said, Nathan, you made the team. Now get your ass downstairs, start practice. I tell you that story because I think no is the most powerful word in the English language. And if you use it properly, you manage your time, you use it as motivation, and you get a lot of things done. And fast forward almost 40 years, my former teammate, who was also a walk-on, we're roommates, teammates, in each other's weddings, went to each other's divorces. His mom has Alzheimer's, so we talk a lot. There's been some very candid, emotional conversations. We were at a game over the holidays at Loyola Marymount. We were reminiscing about how this one seminal moment brought our lives together, and we've been friends for 40 years. So for me, when someone tells me no, that's when it's just game on, and I just step it up to the next level. So I share that as a personal story, but I've used that for so much professional motivation, and that really just drives me.
And then we'll hop back to the chat.
Thank you both.
Yeah, you're a popular guy, man. You're a popular host.
Thank you.
It's all you, man. It's all about you.
Hi, my name is Odysseina Cameron. I am the owner of Ventura Home Loans. And my question is really, so John, you spoke about the degree so that box is checked. So these days, what is not a degree, because that can take a long time to get, but what is an emotional or mindset skill that a person of color could cultivate so that when they walk in the room, that is an advantage to them? Something that you're maybe not seeing in the youth right now, that somebody can start reading about, practicing, and cultivating within themselves.
Oh, can I start?
You guys start, I'll finish.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mindfulness. I think, I think so often we're always just like running, and people don't take the time to just stop and take stock sometimes. I think especially in the media world where there's instant gratification, like on Netflix, I can email, I can get instant chat, like all those things, we forget to stop and just think sometimes. I think a lot of times we rush to a yes because we're afraid of getting a no from someone else. And so I think being 10 toes down and taking a moment to really just check in with yourself, where am I? How did this conversation make me feel? Do I actually want this, or am I running into something with without really just be mindful of the decisions that you're making? That's been especially in a career in the arts where it's very easy to be taken advantage of, and you want to say yes because if you feel like you don't say yes, that you miss all the opportunity. It took a lot of years for me to build that skill of like, oh no, I don't have to take every job, and that doesn't diminish my value. And if that person doesn't want to work with me because I said no, that doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Actually, like I probably don't want to work there. Like, so being able to like deduce those things has been a cool tool for me.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's it's about research, and for me, maybe it's a flaw or something, but I research everything before I do it, and or if I take something or buy something, and I know it drives my wife crazy. But I'll research refrigerators for like a week.
Same here.
And
Same
then,
here.
But
Spent 2 weeks researching a golf bag.
It's just
Not the bag.
that's the way I do it. But I encourage my daughters to do that. They graduated from college, and they all have their different things that they want to do. My oldest graduated, and she was like, "Oh, I think I want to go to med school." I said, "Well, do you really want to go?" I said, "Well, why don't you come home, get you a job in the medical field, follow someone, see what it's like, know what the business of being in medicine is like, so you make an informed decision. You don't want to be in somewhere 2 years and, X amount of dollars and then decide, oh, I don't want to do it." So, that's what I encourage them to do. And they've all been able to do that. They come home, they research what they want to do, and then they've successfully gone to graduate school and been able to follow their dreams because they've looked at it and said, okay, I know the ins and outs. I know what I'm looking at when I come out of the back end of that thing, in terms of potential debt or job opportunities, et cetera. And that's what I would suggest for anyone in any kind of pursuit is do the research, know all the ins and outs, know exactly what you're walking into when you go through that door.
I'd agree with both comments. I think like when I recruit either entry level or mid-level people, I would say there's 3 things you look at. You got book sense, street sense, common sense. Book sense, okay, 1 + 1 does equal 2, doesn't equal anything else. Common sense, okay, I see this bus coming as I'm walking across the street, let me not go past it. And street sense to know that when someone's trying to run a game on you, with a straight face, you can take it and run a game right back on them. And you don't have to have a Harvard MBA to have that. And again, no offense to Harvard grads, but it's that combination with mindfulness, with that research, just be true to who you are. And I think in today's world, I have an MBA, he has a law degree. And one of my regrets is that I didn't go back to law school. I should have went that extra year to get the JD. I didn't, I do regret that. But I think a graduate degree doesn't necessarily make you smarter. It makes you think more analytically and more logically. But in today's world, trades, other life experience, that may be just as valuable as textbook education. Because a lot of 4.0s that went to school that don't have common sense to see the bus coming across the street. So I think both of them are right. I can't really add anything on. They're both spot on.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been very, very lovely.
Okay, Christy, what we got in the chat? Oh, Sonia's ready. Go for it.
I don't want to monopolize. I just want to drop some questions in there in case somebody else I can hold off.
You ask good questions. You speak the speech.
Okay. My question is, when you hear or see any African American females doing the thing, working twice as hard for twice as long to get the same thing as everyone else and to have the same regard, do you ever feel the need to provide encouragement or other support systems? And if so, do you feel that help is preferential, obligatory, or just helpful? You're just being helpful.
So it's specific to African-American females, if you see that.
Yes, specific there.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. one of the things that I've enjoyed being able to do in this role, and it's, you know, in executive roles at Bonneville, is mentor a lot of our up and coming managers, a number of which are female and a few are African American female. You know, I think in our environment, I'll just speak to, you know, the Bonneville environment. It's always good to encourage the same things that were encouraged in me, and taking on different opportunities, broadening your skill set, your knowledge of the organization, and being able to, you know, provide them with, I think, opportunities to grow. But, you know, we're generally providing, you know, everyone opportunities to grow who really demonstrates the initiative. So it's a lot of support, it's a lot of encouragement, and also just feedback on your own experience for them to learn from. I think as we've kind of progressed over the last few years, one of the things that I found very gratifying was there was a recent article in a magazine that looked at our power services executive team, which is run by an African American woman, Suzanne Cooper, and her entire team is female. And so, you know, I'll say that as we've gone through and we made those hires, I wasn't really thinking about the composition of the team being all female. You know, we were hiring the best candidates that we had for those positions. And it was this magazine that actually brought that to our attention, which was really, really cool. And that got me to asking the question. I think someone was mentioning how we have to provide opportunities in the roles that we are, you know, basically reach back. And, you know, we did the numbers, and, you know, I've always had an intention at giving opportunities, because the one thing I do believe and know is that you can talk all of the D&I you want, unless you have diversity in hiring positions, it will not happen. You have got to have that. And so our executive team, during the tenure that I've been in there, 80% of our hires on our executive team, vice presidents, have been either women or people of color. And what that means is that when we've had the opportunity, we've taken it. Our teams are now much more diverse. And over this stretch of the last 4 years that I've been in this role, we've had more success financially. We've been able to achieve goals that we've set out, and actually do some things that haven't been done, you know, in decades for our organization and for our customers. So, you know, my takeaway from that is, you know, take the best candidate, and you know what? In doing that and having an open mind, we've added diversity to our organization, and that diversity has really lent itself to tremendous success.
I think, John, I'm going to choose one of John's words that I think is very powerful. It's called being intentional. And when it comes to recruiting, you know, if you broaden your pool and reach out to get a diverse pool, I think by choice, the cream of the crop will rise up, and you will get the best candidate, because you have a diverse pool. That candidate is more likely than not to be diverse. And then from a coaching and mentoring standpoint, because there are some cultural similarities, I think the dialogue is going to be more helpful and more beneficial, because there's things in common that can help move that mentor along. But I also say that part of mentoring is telling people what they need to know, which isn't always what they want to hear. And I'm mentoring a C-suite African-American executive now, and she's hell-bent on being either a CEO or a chief revenue officer. And we had a heart-to-heart a couple weeks ago, and I'll be in Dallas on Thursday at this event. I'm going to talk to her. I said, take a step back. Why do you want this role so bad? And her response was, because I'm prepared for it, and this is what I want to do. I said, why? And I kept pushing and pushing, and it finally came out that, you know what, maybe I'm not ready. And I didn't say she wasn't qualified, but she said she wasn't ready. And that's where the self-awareness kicked in.
I appreciate that feedback very much. To tie the last question to this one, some of the advice that I was given once was in a room full of VPs where I was a less senior and the only African American female present. I was told that when we enter the room, you don't have to say anything. We don't, don't cause a stir. And I watched and I took that advice while my work was presented, and I was not able to say anything. And I beat myself up about that. And I should have said something. This is my work you're talking about, and I'm not allowed to say anything. And so my question, this question was really, your answer was really helpful, and it was directional in that, are you perceived preferential when you reach out and you say, hey, Sonia, this is your work, you present it, and we're going to support you? Or do you feel obligated when I feel dejected to say, nope, you're going to present it in the next meeting, right? Do you step in as senior as you are, or do you give me that time to learn my lesson, to speak up for myself? So it's this fine line. It feels like African-American women, and I can only speak for myself, we walk to make sure we're not offending, to get that opportunity to rise. And so I don't know if it's singular to African-American women and not African-American men or any other minority. I'm just sharing how I have been affected, and this is super helpful. So thank you for your response.
Yeah. It's Latasha.
Yes.
And then we'll come to you, Daryl. Sorry.
So great comment, Sonia. One of the books that I read was Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, CEO at Facebook. And she talked about women and how we follow the rules. If you say last question, women will sit there and not raise their hand most of the time. I won't say all women, but most of the time. But guys will continue to move forward. And so since learning that, I've learned to push past I'll stay within the guidelines, but I extend past the boundaries. So I bring that up to say, which was my question, is if I was to be mentored by you guys, I don't have the time, or you guys probably don't have the time, we're not the same location, just whatever, what book would you recommend that changed your life and that you would say, you know what, this is the book that I feel like everyone should read?
For me, I would say pretty interesting was probably The 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell.
I have two. I can't remember the author of this one. It's called Raving Fans, and it's one of those books, like say, with big print, big font, so you can read it real fast. It's about 60 pages, but it teaches management and leadership in the confines of a love story at a grocery store. It takes like a half an hour to read. The other one would be The Art of War by Shin Tzu.
Yeah.
And I say that because whether you take a faith-based approach and you go through and look at the example of Ruth and Boaz, or you take a military approach, in this one, you always in capital letters have to be playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers, and you got to stay one step ahead.
For me, it's The Cat in the Hat. He didn't take no for an answer. He made sure everybody had a good time and cleaned up the mess at the end of the day. A question from the screen, Darrell.
Can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
All right, you're hilarious. So I apologize for my question wasn't clear enough earlier. So being that you have nations with names all over the planet Earth that are historically recognized, like Korea, Koreans, Nicaragua, Nicaraguans, et cetera, Africa not being a nation historically ever, nor today, being that it's a continent. My question earlier was kind of predicated off of intellectually speaking, when we are talking about Black as an identification for our people, and Black being an adjective, something that describes a noun. And previously I spoke about the Moorish history, which not many people may be familiar with. Y'all may be familiar, being that y'all took some law background, and I'm sure there's some correlations there. But long story short, before that we were called Black, we were called Blackamoor. So I'm curious to hear about your perspective of how we identify today as it relates to other nations of people, and how we behave and conduct ourselves, which is at variance to nationhood, as a nation, a particular nation of people. So I hope that's a little more clear, because I definitely want to dig deep and take this opportunity for you all to draw out what the intelligence that you have in regards to this topic of discussion about identification and your perspective of it therein.
I'll take a kind of jump at it. So a couple years ago, I got a ancestry.com link to go sign up to figure out where I was coming from. And for years, I thought my family basically, I knew the history through the Caribbean, the South, up to St. Louis to California. As I did it, I found out that, and I was supposed to be part Northern European, but most of my background was Senegal, Ghana, and Nigeria. If I understand your common question accordingly, because I come from the diaspora, that's in my blood. So I've never had an issue about who I represent or how I identify. And I think because I know where I came from and I'm authentic about that, I have a very clear vision of where I'm going. So I'm trying to, if I understand your points correctly, that's how I approach it. And my journey is what makes me unique, and what makes me unique is what makes me special. No one can take that away.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think that's where we're at.
I saw Kimberly Moreland's question pop up, and it was, what is your secret sauce? If you have to describe your secret sauce of leadership, and Kimberly, please correct me if I'm not saying it correctly, but what is your secret sauce that makes you a strong leader, do you think? And what is the legacy that you think you will leave behind, or that you would like to leave behind?
Yeah, so secret sauce. I don't know if it's necessarily a secret sauce, but I do believe in being mindful of what folks are doing. I mean, they come to work, they work hard, they're working hard for their families, and I what I touched on earlier, we will accomplish things. Our enterprise is such that we've got great people. We're going to do the work. We're going to accomplish things, but it's how we accomplish it that is important to me. And having the work environment, having our employees really appreciate where they're coming, to what they're coming to in terms of the work environment and their satisfaction with their jobs, and feeling as though they were recognized for their efforts. That's important to me at the end of the day. Hopefully in a few years when I'm at my retirement dinner, folks talk about the journey together more so than the destination or the accomplishment.
I don't have a secret sauce, but the first lesson I was taught in management when I was going through management training at Gallo in the mid to late 80s, the instructor said, actually former baseball player at SC, he said, you want to develop a commanding presence. And that's when you're in a room and people will gravitate to you before you have to gravitate to them. Always have your presence be known, and that will allow you to really go in a different direction, different pace. And think about it, so the next time all of you are in a room, think about how long it takes before people come to you. And intentionally, don't go to other people. Let them come to you. And that's going to, again, help develop your presence. And in terms of the legacy, I was just talking with a friend about this the other day. Kind of like John, I'd like to retire in a few years. But
I'm gonna tell you son.
I want, yeah, no, he's aware of it. I would like my legacy to be that the electric bill's paid.
John, help!
I didn't realize we did that still. All right, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I want my legacy to be a person. Take away the executive, take away the leader. A person who inspired others to achieve beyond what they expected and left a legacy in the community that he lived, worked, and worshipped.
Okay. Well, I just got the hand from Addisina, so. Absolutely, no, for sure. Do you have one final question to Tony? I do have. Okay, one final question from Tony Wallace, and then we're gonna wrap it up. I know. Yeah.
First, I want to say thank you to both of you gentlemen coming in, sharing your time and your wisdom with us here at the Washington County Chamber of Commerce and the Black Advisory Business Council, and with our viewers and listeners online as well. You're dropping nothing but gems, and we really appreciate you being here with us and sharing some of your journey with us today. So my name is Titonian Wallace Sr. I'm the chair of the Diversity Council's chair-elect of the Board of Directors for the Washington County Chamber and owner of Nasace Media. So my question is for you, Nathan Cox. You spoke about how competitive you are, and I'm basically the same way. So being as competitive as you are in the finance field, I'm sure you keep up with all of the news that's going on in your industry. I recently read a local credit union was joining with another local bank. I believe it's Rivermark and Advantage Credit Union. Yeah. So with that being said, does that do anything competitively with InRoads Credit Union? Are you watching that to see how much market share they're taking? Are they potentially taking customers, potential future customers from you? Or are there things that you as the CEO of InRoads look at and say, now I need to do this to counter that, or does it not matter?
It doesn't matter, and I say that respectfully. I know both of the CEOs, and I think that is a great merger because it's going to deepen a financial commitment in the community. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the important thing, and I'm paying attention to it more from an industry trend, not necessarily locally. I think for me, our industry is, we have a lot of technology issues. We're highly regulated, much like banks. And the issue is, how do we handle all this stuff out in the marketplace? The economy, interest rates, regulatory, technology, because, cybersecurity right now is probably the proverbial what keeps me awake at night is cyber threats. How do we manage all that, still drive our business? And it just keeps me focused. I think the financial commitment and the impact of what they're going to do in the communities they serve is going to be significant. And I just think it's part of our business. I mean, so again, I'm not diminishing the merger, but I think for me, it's like, okay, that happened. All right, I got to keep pushing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And because
Okay.
Cheryl Sandberg said, we always stop when we're told we're going to
Ah,
stop. Right. So with that being said, I will ask the last question.
I knew that was coming.
And I want to know, because I think this is important for every person. We're all out there grinding hard, and we are working hard hours. We're doing double what we should do. But the question I have for you two is, how do you rest and recharge, and how important is that? And I think that's a good question to end on.
Absolutely.
I think that's perfect.
Absolutely.
All right. So, I think for me, I get a lot of rest, just kind of killing time with my wife and you know, spending time with my daughters, the two that are still at home. You know, I think staying physically fit, you know, working out, running is important. And then also clearing your mind. For me, you know, and it's different with everyone. Everyone has a different approach or different way of resting and finding peace. You know, I get out, I was telling Nathan, I get out and play golf. And when I'm out there, I can't think of anything else. And so, you know, that's 2 to 4 hours that my mind is clear and focused on something that is different than work or the challenges that we've got going on in the office. And that's important. And then, you know, spending quality time with my family and understanding what's that why, you know, why are you doing all of this stuff? What's the purpose? And keeping grounded in that, because, you know, all these, you know, these roles really don't mean much if you don't have your health, you know, peace, and most importantly, your family. So, you know, for me, you know, that's where I kind of find my, you know, my sanctuary.
Similar to John, I would say faith, family, and friends. I start every morning off with quiet reading and meditation. It just keeps me focused. Family, the older I get, now that I'm kind of moving up in that generational cycle and realize that there's more people younger than me the older that's going. I have a very close group of friends. And then like John, I play golf. For me, Sacramento, obviously it's hot during the summer, but even up here, I put my headphones on, I'll get 100, 150 balls, and I just will hit balls. And just the solitude of that, and going back to something Nik said, being mindful. And I had someone teach me a mindfulness exercise, and it was so acute that I was focused so much, and I used golf as a way to learn it. I could actually hear the blades, I could see the blades of grass come up from the ground when I hit the ball, and I could see them turning as the ball was leaving the club. And it just really just takes so much off of my shoulders. And I love playing golf by the ocean. So when I was in California, I'd be down at Pebble Beach, San Francisco, wherever. But like John, I play golf because it's a chance for us to unwind, because I'm willing to say 50 hours might be a light week for you. And, you know, we grind, but we do need that downtime. Plus, I love to cook. I do that too. So I don't work out as much as him. That's my downfall. I got to get back in the gym.
Well, we'll see John and Nathan on the golf course together.
Oh, yeah.
He's a friend. He just got
You
here.
already said that, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you both for being here. This is amazing.
It's a privilege.
Your work that you're doing is so important for, you know, our communities and also for our community. So thank you for being here, for sharing your knowledge, and thank you in the virtual world. Thank you for being in the room. And yeah,
I appreciate all the questions. It was really cool.
Yeah, great questions. Pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.